Welcome back to Awkward Insurance, where anything awkward flies. Thanks so much for joining me today. We have a quick talking guest all the way from New York, Aaron Gordon from Gordon Companies. Hey, Aaron.
Hi, I will try to be as not awkward as possible.
Oh, be as awkward as you want to be. That's what we're here for. So he has been featured on several podcasts lately and has sparked a playful election that I also got pulled into. My good friend Heath Sharon hosts the Insurance Town podcast and is known as the mayor of Insurance Town. And when Aaron's episode debuted, he formally announced that he was running for sheriff of Insurance Town. And I don't think he expected he was going to have some competition.
That's not true. I knew there would be competition. I just knew I'd blow the competition away. And for the record, I was nominated by the mayor.
Wow.
I didn't volunteer. The mayor wanted me, which is why everyone who's listening here, when the elections become public and there is a time to vote, just remember, I was the original. That's a little bit of New York in me, but that's just, I spit the truth. And the truth is that I was the original sheriff. This should be a landslide election, and I'm not really sure why there's a competition at this point.
Oh my gosh. Wow. You have some confidence, bud.
Just about this, but nothing else. If I can't win an election that I've started, then I got a big problem.
That's true. So you better hope you win, because if you actually don't win.
I'm setting myself up for a lot of failure here, which is another thing I try to avoid, but that's okay. You
kind of are. How big is your shovel right now?
Exactly. Foot in mouth.
Well, welcome to Awkward Insurance. I am so happy to have you here. I can't wait to have some conversations with you. I'm not really sure where we're going to go today, but I think I have a general idea and direction as to what I want to talk about. But I kind of feel like you have no problem leading us down other paths. So, Aaron Gordon, let's tell us a little bit about yourself. Right now, you are the vice president at Gordon Companies.
I'm currently the vice president and not quite principal at Gordon Companies. We are based out of New York. The firm was started by my father on December 6, 1968. My mother came along and joined the firm in 1983 when my parents got married. She was in the industry at the time. And I came on summers beginning when I was in high school, then through college, worked part-time, and then came on full-time on August 1st, 2010. And it's been a crazy ride ever since. We are having an incredible couple of years, even given the pandemic, which is great. Most of that is because of our client first business model. Everyone says it. I'm sure we'll get into the details of what that means to us. Our incredible staff that was so great through the difficult time and through the scramble that was taking a company remote that was never remote before.
Right.
I don't know anything else besides insurance. I grew up with it at the dining room table. Dinner talk was all about insurance. I tell people that my wife will never work in the firm, but then again, my mother said that she would never work with her spouse after she grew up with her parents having a business, and that happened. So I never say never, but I can't imagine. My office is physically located directly between my parents. My father's office is to my left, my mother's office is to my right.
Aww.
So I see that. So maybe we'll leave it at that for the sake of the fact that people in my family are probably listening to this, but it's been an incredibly fun and entertaining ride so far. And I hope that it continues for many years working together with my parents and our staff.
Oh, how positively uplifting was that little message about our parents?
A lot of people ask me what it's like to work in a family business. And we can talk about insurance as a family business or how those things work. But the real truth is that when you're a kid in this business or in any business, it's all about figuring out, kind of like a marriage, how to make it work. And what my father always says is the highs are super high. There's nothing better than a win with your parents or I assume with your child. It is challenging when you have to talk to your parents about finances or when there is a challenging account or when you feel that things should be done a certain way and they don't feel that, which is fine. But in the end of the day, there's no person who's going to be as loyal to your business as your child or as your parent. So,
right.
I never have to worry about our book since my mother does that.
Right. Now, I've listened to a couple of your episodes and, the growing pains that you've gone through with your parents to bring on some technology. And I'm sure those were some interesting conversations when they had to happen.
Yeah. So it's gotten to a point now where they know that I'm not going to just buy into any piece of technology.
Yeah.
And I know that they're not going to let me buy into any piece of technology. I also I wasn't convinced of this when I started, that this business could be the way that they said it was for the last 50 and 60 years. And everyone has said that we were going to be dead for the last 50 or 60 years. And somehow we're still here. So I think that it's the technology, right? Exactly. Surprise, we're still here. But it's the technologies that help us service our clients and meet our clients where they want to be met,
Right.
which are the ones that they know that I'm going to buy into. I think they also, all three of us understand, my parents and I, that I probably know technology a little bit better than they do.
Right.
So they know that I'm not going to mess with their clients. I'm not going to force their clients into using Glovebox or anything else like that. But they also kind of agree that I shouldn't force my clients or my contemporaries to get their policies in the mail or wet sign applications.
Your contemporaries. I love the way you put that. You've got a couple of little catchphrases that have been interesting to me. We'll explore some of those a little bit later. First, I want to know, you live in New York. I have never been to New York. What is this?
What?
I know, right? I got some questions.
And you call yourself a human.
Strangest food you've ever eaten in New York then, because I need a list.
Does chewing gum off the floor of a subway when I was a kid probably count? Is that a food?
No. That's
I'm guessing.
disgusting.
I don't know. When I grew up, we rode the city subways. And then to find out during this whole COVID pandemic that they were never really cleaned, right? They had to shut down the New
you
York
should
City
be
subways.
immune at this point because you rode the subways.
I'm well, that was the scary thing about COVID was they found something that we weren't immune from, being exposed to New York City rats, right? So that was a scary thing here in New York. And that's why I think that New York took it so seriously.
I understand
when we realized that natural germed immunity, like if you've never consumed water, I don't want to say drink, I just want to say if you've never consumed water from a public fountain in Central Park, have you really lived? If you've never eaten one of those hot dogs, which I've never had because for religious reasons, but when you see those people who consume those hot dogs from those carts in Times Square, you got to think there's no germ that's going to get to them. If that hot dog and whatever's on that cart doesn't get to them.
So anyway, strangest food you ever ate was gum off the subway floor.
I think so.
I don't think you have much to worry about in terms of immunity.
I'm strictly kosher, so it's hard for me to get really creative or out there with my food consumption. But we do have great pizza. I know that that's not strange, but again, if you've never eaten New York pizza or a good bagel, don't tell me you can replicate it there. Come visit and I'll buy you pizza and a bagel and we'll go from there.
So you work with your parents. Yeah. You grew up in the industry. My kids are growing up knowing the industry because it's all they've ever known. And they've come to,
I'm sorry.
And they've come to work with me and, seen what a typewriter is because those are still hanging around some of the offices. In what way do you act like your parents? You've got one on one side and one on the other. And we're getting older. And as we start to get older, we realize that we have mannerisms we're picking up. So in what way do you act like your parents that you're just like,
it's really, really disturbing because my siblings, when they hear work mode, my parents and my brothers will just look at me and go, "Oh no, you are dad. You are dad." Some of the
work
things that I
mode?
say is the way we act, the way I'm like my parents.
Like it's your superpower, activate work mode?
Exactly. Well, in our business, there's never non-work mode. But like, for instance, when we were all together for Father's Day, it can't be that my parents and I will be in the same room or in the same backyard, whatever, and not get into the weeds on insurance because that's just what we do.
Right.
And so I find myself very often quoting my father. I try to say that on the service end, and this is not a knock on him, but I try to emulate my mother more. My mother is, and this is an industry thing that people tell me, so it's not just me bragging about my mom, which is, I guess, cute, but my mother is the most well-read and well-versed service-oriented person I've ever met in the industry, to the point where last week I had my first lunch since the start of this pandemic with two of our underwriters from one of the carriers we work with, and one of them was my first time meeting her. And she was talking about how she really wants to meet my mother because she's heard so much about her. And the gentleman who was with us, who's worked with us for the last few years, says, if you're going to meet with her, you're ever going to call her, just make sure you have your forms in order and you know that policy backwards and forwards because she's read it, unlike most of us. But the interesting thing is that she's also very, very gentle and soft in her service mode and when she talks to these people. So I feel very blessed that I get used to be able to every day hear her in action. And we have clients that still to this day will only speak to her. And I'm totally cool with that as long as she's cool with that. And so that I try to emulate my mother's service dedication I don't send emails at 3:00 in the morning like she does because she's part robotic. But, and I mean that in the best possible way. And my dad, he's just old school. Like we're all about relationships, and that's what my parents have taught me. And as much as I try to sometimes get away from it, or I do podcasts, or I'm doing technology or things like that.
Absolutely.
There is nothing like a good relationship.
Wow. So your LinkedIn also says that you're a millennial insurance expert with an old soul. So I know that you are familiar with the Beyonce of insurance, Miss Ashley Fitzsimmons. She's been on this podcast before. We're gearing up to have her on again. And I am so intrigued now that I've heard this so many times. I'm on that cusp of being a millennial as well. And so I'm like, okay, well, what does it mean to be a millennial in the insurance industry? Why is that a bragging right? What is that to you?
So I think what it means is that I can understand your pain points as a newer or younger consumer. So I try to be knowledgeable, and I take the word expert and the title expert very seriously. And that's why I take my insurance education very seriously, and any chance I have to further that education, I'll take. But I believe, and that's the old soul. The old soul is saying, I'm going to call you when you have a claim. I'm going to show up. I'll make sure that your bills get paid. I am as dedicated, I hope, as any producer out there or CSR out there, because I can't expect more from my staff than I expect of myself. But being a millennial, I also understand that you don't want me to call you sometimes. You don't want me to send you mail. You don't want me to necessarily, quote unquote, bother you with every little thing. You'd rather a summary. You'd rather a piece of technology. You'd rather maybe a text. You'd rather a call after hours because there's so much else going on.
So a millennial insurance expert with an old soul, is that like is it like a tagline for you? Is that something that you feel is marketable?
I hope it's marketable. I worked on it a lot. So people told me that my social media presence has to be worked on. I'm working on it in the last year.
I love your social media presence. Okay.
Thank you.
I just have to stop for a second. You are on, what platforms are you on? You're on Instagram?
Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn.
And soon to be what?
And soon to be YouTube.
YouTube. Okay. I've always been on Facebook. Of course, I've always been on LinkedIn. I've not been much on social media after that. Well, now I am. I'm trying to figure out Instagram. I learned stories after you posted your story I had to Google it, of course, and get a tutorial. I should have just hit you up and be like, how'd you make the story? So after you made your story for the election thing, I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's amazing. I can't compete with that.
Wow, you're making my day. Oh my gosh. Now I'm going to get all awkward.
But I love your stories that you post, and you walk down the street. Is this you walking on your way to work?
So the interesting thing, and this is why I love podcasts, is I hope that my personality comes out a little bit. Your personality is definitely coming through in this podcast, and it's great. It's fun and all that. And my wife thinks it's funny because I'm the kind of person, unlike her, where if you put me in a networking event in a room, I have zero shame. I really don't care. And not in a bad way, right? I'll go over, I can strike up a conversation with anyone. And what I've learned in the back of my mind is, so even if I make a total idiot out of myself, I'll probably never see you again unless I want to see you again, right? Unless I want to follow up. Now, give me a gimbal and a selfie stick, and it is painful how long it takes me to record a stupid 10-second video. I mean, there's one that never even made it to the social, so hopefully it'll make it there next year, where I went onto the roof of my garage and I was cleaning out the leaves for my gutters. And I did a whole thing on winter preparedness. And there I am. It's raining. I'm out there. And usually the process takes 10 minutes to clean the gutters. And my wife is staring at me through the window, basically thinking, okay, this is the end of Aaron. Because I was there for an hour recording this stupid 10-second clip, which never even made it because it never came out well. But I'm working on, I was basically only a LinkedIn guy until about a year ago. And then people kind of told me, you got to get out a little more. So I kind of got into it. I'm still very new to it. So I really, really do appreciate the compliment. You really made my day. But I was much more of a LinkedIn person. So I worked on the tagline. So to answer your question on marketability, I worked on the tagline because I was trying to think about what sets me out.
I like it because it touches both. You can spin it however you need to. When you're talking to an older prospect, you can, I'm a really old soul. I might be a millennial, but what's that to you? Or you can go the other direction. So it's very versatile.
I don't want it to be too salesy. We're more on the advisory side. So I use the word advisor and I use outsource risk manager because I want you to view me as the guy in the boardroom who's not part of your company. So I feel that, and nothing against them because there's some very good ones, but brokers Broker,
Well,
people think like used car salesman. So it's not my.
right. Well, and I feel like if you use those kind of titles anyways, most consumers are not going to understand the difference between an agent and a broker. So it can be intimidating, but an advisor, everybody knows what an advisor is. And when you say the word advisor, it instills a level of trust before you even know the person. So I agree with you on that. But I'm going to redirect you one more time. When you're walking down the sidewalk, that skyline that I see,
New York City, Midtown Manhattan.
that's you walking to your office. I love it. And you're always talking about such fun things, and some of it's insurance-y stuff, and some of it's just what's on your mind, and you're just so authentic in
So
those
that
videos.
walk is about a minute and a half.
Do you walk the
And
block
I
3 times just so you
have to. Exactly. So I go the long way. I go the long way because it's like I always wonder the people who are sitting who like work in the retail
Here
stores
comes Aaron.
along this walk. Like, who's that guy who was like basically pacing back and forth with the stupid camera? Like, it's New York City, so
That's funny. I love that you take a longer way just so you can get those videos. But those are like in all my stalking. Those are fun.
thank you.
Oh my goodness. So there's another term that I found on your LinkedIn that I'm really curious about, a growing boutique insurance agency. What is a boutique insurance?
So to me, the word boutique means that, and I don't know I don't know if this is the dictionary definition, but it means that we, regardless of our size, we really have that tailor-made approach. And this is not at all a knock on people who may be larger brokers. There's very successful ones, but I don't think that it's possible to really provide the level of service that we hope to provide every day unless you really know your clients. So we don't turn away that many clients because that's bad for business. But there are 4 people in our business that are going to know, one of 4 people in our business will intimately know you if you're our client. My father, my mother, me, or we have one outside producer who has a very niche business. But other than that, if we take his small book of business or portion of our business out, someone with the last name Gordon, David, Goldie, or Aaron will know you intimately or know how you got to us. So if you refer someone to me, it's one of the things I was trained in. First of all, it's marked in the file, but second of all, I am going to study that so that when I speak to you 1 or 2 times a year, I'm going to learn more about you and I'm going to learn more about your risks. And I'm going to, by the way, I'm going to follow you on social. And I can tell you that one of the greatest learning experiences for me was when I lost one of the larger clients, the first ever really large middle market account that I ever brought in. And I lost them because they told me that I was annoying. And the reason why I was annoying was they were a real estate developer here in New York. And I was following them on social. And I started noticing they were going to this groundbreaking and they were doing things like that. And I would reach out to them and say, hey, I saw you did this at this building. Let's talk about the insurance coverage because I don't think that there's coverage.
Oh.
Or I think we need to change your coverage. And I'm not knocking people who don't do that. I lost the business to a big broker. So they got the last laugh, quote unquote, in that. But I would rather see a new ring on someone's finger on Instagram and say, hey, let's tackle the insurance. Or we have a client a prospect I was working on, and I see that her family's in the car with a chauffeur. And I reach out to her and I'm like, hey, we just did a whole proposal. Is that your full-time driver? What's the deal with that? She said, oh yeah, I just hired him. I was like, oh, we need to follow that. We need to put that on your insurance. And then she's like, well, maybe I don't want that on my insurance. And then I didn't get the account. But that it means that you have a Jewish mother in my mother, you have a Jewish father in my father, and you have a Jewish brother in me. And that means a lot of Jewish guilt and a lot of worrying, which is why we're in the risk business.
So do you not find that daunting at all? And I totally get it. And I agree with you, paying attention and you know, those little details and starting those conversations with your clients. But it would keep me up all night, that I would feel like I'd need to like constantly be on social media, checking out my clients and like, well, if I'm going to catch this risk for that person, what if I don't catch the risk for the next person? And I think I would lose sleep over it.
So I look at it as saying, how can I provide that extra level of that boutique service when I do catch it? But not to correct you, but I wouldn't run scared from missing things. What ticks me off is when I miss an easy follow-up. Like I tell someone I'll call them and I just miss it in my calendar. I put it in the wrong day. Like that annoys me.
I love that you're just wholly embracing the social media aspect and you're bringing just such authenticity, especially as a younger professional in the industry, to really not only help others, and then you're giving like this quasi education to industry professionals as well, which leads me into conversations about your amazing designations that you have. You have the CAPI designation, which, and both of your designations are generally offered by Chubb. Is that correct?
Correct.
So you have the CAPI, that one's offered by Chubb through the Wharton School of Business. I was familiar with that one. It's one that I'm kicking myself for not getting before I left the agency. I really wanted that one, but I just never pursued it hard enough. And so now that I'm not in an agency, it's going to be impossible for me to get. And then there's the CCIC certification that I was not aware of, and I dug around on it a little bit, and that was pretty daggum amazing too. So education is really important to you, which of course here at the National Alliance, it's very important to us as well. We've got our professional designations, the CISR, CIC, CRM, CSRM, but then we've also got a level of university education as well. So I kind of want to touch on education just a little bit, since that's our thing too, and ask you how you feel education has played a role in where you're at today and your successes, if you see them as successes. I'm not sure if you're done climbing yet, and what your gauge of success is, but how has education played a role in where you're at today?
Sure, great question. I'm an education junkie. What I can tell you is in both my work as a producer and my work as a CSR/account manager, what the education and the designations have showed me or have given me is a certain level of confidence. And that's not ego,
Yes.
but it's when I went into the room the first day at CAPI. So here we are, we're at Wharton. Obviously, I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would be a student at Wharton. Obviously, I wasn't a student in the undergraduate program, but I never viewed myself that. And then I look around the room and I see the quality of the people that are in the room. And then I start learning. And one of the things that I'll be completely honest, to kind of pull back the curtain a little bit, is before I took those classes, I didn't think that quote unquote affluent/emerging wealth personal lines was going to be a great avenue for me going forward. And so for me, it was, I took the classes, but I thought that direct writers and that we would just, personal lines was not going to be a vehicle for us or a vertical for us. And when I left that class, I said, I can do this. There is a need for this, and there's a need for this expertise. The story always tells about finding someone's wine cellar that they conveniently forgot to tell us and 2 carrier inspections missed, but because it was a little bit hidden. And then I kind of spoke to about the extent of wine collections and insurance and evaluating those. But if you understand the depth, risk is a serious business. Insurance is a risky business, quote unquote, as people say. Mm-hmm. So it's not the education levels. Obviously, getting the cyber designation when I did, finishing up and starting in 2019 and finishing in 2020 when the cyber world blew up, it was very opportunistic. But the same thing there, when you're in a room with people and you realize that there's no way that the consumers are going to be able to take us online or take us or get away from us, then we're just going to continue doing what we're doing. And if you have that confidence because of the education that you have, that's the leg up. And there is no computer that will ever be able to replace human expertise. So that for me is something pretty unique and special.
I love all of that message that you just relayed. I'm a bit of an education junkie myself, only my education is not as focused as yours.
By the way, that's great too. That's great too, because there is something in knowing other disciplines besides. And I'm an insurance junkie, so it's hard for me to get away from insurance, but I often wish that there was the ability to say that some of the continuing ed could be in ancillary fields, not necessarily insurance. In that insurance is great and it's obviously what we need to know, but maybe we could learn about company financials if we're going to be on the commercial side, because if you're underwriting D&O, that's something to look into. And that shouldn't be looked at as something outside of our day-to-day or shunned upon by our industry. That should be promoted. And first of all, it's a great way to meet people, right? Networking with fellow insurance agents is nice. And my best friends are in this industry, but networking with them is only going to get me so far. I got to network with people outside of my industry. And so a tip I would give people is become educated in the service verticals that you're working with. So if you're working with restaurants, learn about install systems, learn about restaurants. If you're working with high net worth or affluent personal lines, learn about their risk, learn about umbrella liability, learn about the lawsuits, learn about the carriers, learn about things like that. Because, learn about watches, learn about fancy jewelry, learn about fancy art, because it's cool and people like it. So it's kind of gives you a leg up.
All right, you're so well spoken when it comes to your industry language, and that comes through in the education that you've had. Let's see. So the CAPI is the Certified Advisor of Personal Insurance, and then the new one that I learned was the CCIC, the Cyber Cope Insurance Certification, and that's the biggest thing that no matter where you get your insurance education from, there's going to be haters and there's going to be people that boost you. And at the National Alliance, we've got the designations, but one of the biggest benefits to attending the courses is not only, especially if you interact with the faculty, you can help transform that education. But one of the biggest benefits, man, is being able to network, and you get to meet people like yourself and absorb the way they talk about the industry and hear what they're saying and learn terms like CCIC. I'm still struggling to get it out of my mouth. So networking in those educational roles, you get the benefit of learning about it and learning from the people that are in it. So thank you so much for talking about your education and how it's really given you the confidence, because that to me is what education is about.
For sure. What I will say to your credit is one of the things that I've seen in the National Alliance, although I would love to get more involved, especially in the education side of that, is, and this is going to sound corny, but I don't do the education for the suffix. I don't use, as you can tell in my signature, I don't use is it suffixi, whatever the word is there. But one of the things that I wish was different, and I see trending in the right direction, so I really feel great about this, is, my wife is a pediatric occupational therapist. And so she also, for her license, she has to do continuing education. And the biggest difference between the two of us in our professions is she really looks forward to her continuing ed. She's in the middle of a 3-week course now, and it's incredible how she's doing it at night and she's passionate about it. I've never met an insurance agent that says like, "Oh, I am so stoked for this continuing ed."
I am.
Right. But I think that part of that is just this industry staleness, for lack of a better word, where it's just like, this is the way it's always been, when like we can make it fun, we can make it exciting, we can make it interesting. And then if you hear your colleagues coming back saying, "I just took this amazing course at the National Alliance and I got CE credits," then you're gonna want to be in the know, because it's kind of like a cool fraternity in that, like, one of the, as you said, the ancillary benefits is the network.
Yes.
And one of my biggest beliefs, and it's one of the things that I live by in trying to give back to people, is I believe that your network is your net worth. I did steal that line from someone, I just don't know who, but the network is so valuable, and I am privileged to have an amazing network and people I can lean on. So love that.
I'm so excited to hear you say that. And it's what's needed right now is for younger insurance professionals that aren't afraid to break into educating others as well. Sometimes, especially younger folks may sit back and think, well, I'm not experienced enough. I don't know enough. I still have more to learn. That's always true. And if you ever stop learning, then it's time for you to retire. But younger insurance professionals like you, like myself, we've got to have the confidence to be able to get up and start working on educating others that are our age, younger, and even older, because older folks can learn something from younger folks too. Your parents are learning from you every day, being in the agency, on how to work both models that you guys have going, the boutique style agency, as well as the indie tech, if you will, that's, coming up.
Yeah, I've never worked in any other industry, so I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I've never met an insurance agency principal who didn't want to hear from their staff, especially the younger staff. That doesn't mean that they have to implement everything. But I've literally never met a principal that said, "This person's an idiot for coming and talking to me." But in terms of innovation, in terms of education, in terms of ways of doing things, just because someone doesn't adopt right away what you want doesn't mean that you're wrong. And this industry is changing, but there's so much that will never change and that hasn't changed.
Right.
So the old school people got to learn from the new school, but the new school people got to be open to learning.
Yeah.
And not be afraid to kind of take the risks there.
For sure. What's your insurance soapbox?
What is my insurance
Yeah.
soapbox?
Is it a particular coverage? Is it education? What is your insurance soapbox?
My insurance soapbox is the definition of the word independent.
All right.
And I know that people are going to hate what I'm about to say. And it got me into a little bit of trouble on LinkedIn over the weekend. So
Uh
I apologize in advance for being the controversial guy from New York. But
oh. Is there
to
any other way to be if you're
independence,
a New Yorker?
right, exactly. But independence must mean wholly independent. And I understand that there's a lot of ego coming through the microphone right now, and I apologize for that. But because I work in a small agency with my parents or for my parents, we are not, my feet will not be held to the fire by anybody. And certainly my parents, nobody from any carrier, from any client, from any risk control, from anywhere is going to tell my parents how to place their business, how to run their business, or how to service their insured. And there are so many people out there that claim to be independent when they're not really independent because they have someone else in some corporate tower, quote unquote, to borrow an old term, telling them what they have to do or how they have to do it. Where, I have new carriers that approach me. Wow, you got me fired up. I have carriers that approach me and they talk about carrier appointments. And one of the things that my parents have drilled me on since I was much younger in this business is we don't open carriers whose commitments and relationships we're not going to live up to. So I will gladly work with you or try your product or tell you I was the first agent with some very famous carriers right now, InsurTechs, and the first 6 or 8 months was just me telling them, not in a bad way, the things that were terrible about their product and them telling me what was terrible about the way I was doing business, and we figured it out. But I'm not sure that there are many other agents who are not like us, right? The people that are like me that or that you may have worked with or worked for or been on your podcast, they know exactly what I'm talking about. And they'll do it. And they're great people and they're my closest friends and they are not my competition.
Yeah.
But those people out there who kind of just slide the renewal in on the last day, don't market things the way they're supposed to,
Ew.
or kind of leave out the fact that there's an exclusion and pray that there's no E&O loss. So is that not me standing on a soapbox? By the way, same thing. We pay our producers, same on new and renewal. I will never incentivize people to go run out and chase new business so drastically that they forget about their accounts.
Look at you.
So, wow, was that? I feel so good right now.
He said, I feel so good right now. Woo!
I feel great.
Well, I'm glad I saved that question. No, oh my gosh, Aaron, wow. Your parents are super lucky to have you.
I am even luckier to have them.
My heart just melted just a little bit.
Oh, bless your heart.
No, bless your
Please,
heart is for when you're in trouble. So how did you get started then?
The way I got started was there was a summer early on in high school that I had a break, I think before summer camp or after summer camp, and my siblings had jobs and I didn't. So I kind of came into work, and it's going to sound weird, but I fell in love with it. I love helping people. I'm such a people person and I love using the phone and I love meeting with people.
You can tell. It comes out of every word that you've spoken so far. You can just tell that you are there for the service.
And I was very, very lucky that I'm the youngest of my parents' children, but my parents were really eager to teach me. They didn't have little kids at home that they needed to kind of worry about and pay for lack of a better term. So it was kind of, I think my father especially looked at it much more as a legacy play, which made it much easier to transition or to work together. And I am privileged that he's here every day. He's here today in the office next to me. So that's kind of how I got my start. And there was never, I wish that I could tell people there was pressure. There was no pressure to come into this business. So that's how I got started.
So Aaron, you've been an account executive and now a VP. What things are in store for Gordon Companies? Because I noticed that, are you expanding or are you just filling existing roles right now?
Great question. So what's in the future of Gordon Companies is to keep providing people with the incredible service and the family feel that we've given them for the last 50 years. And the way we're able to do that is with an incredible staff. The problem is, or the challenge is that our team is overburdened and overworked, and they are incredible and they've come through for us in this very challenging time. But we just need, if I could clone the people that we have working in office right now, I would clone them 10 times over, and then have a minion shop. But It's more that we need to be able to service our clients, and that means that we need to provide high touch points and a lot of touch points, and therefore we are hiring. So if anyone here is looking for a job in the back office, CSR roles with potential of production or learning the ropes, or on the personal side and then wants to learn about the commercial side, or the commercial side and then wants to learn about the personal side, we're all about that expansion or wholesome service approach. Obviously, if you love personal lines and that's your passion, we'll tap into that. If you love commercial lines and that's your passion, we'll tap into that. But I think that the unsung heroes of this industry are the account reps and the customer service representatives. And I'm rambling, but it's true. That's why a lot of agencies like ours are struggling now, because when you realize how great your staff is and you need more of it and you cannot find it, it is so painful.
Right. First, I want to say kudos to you for recognizing that your existing staff is a little bit overworked. Sometimes that is initially part of the problem with keeping staff, is that principals or agency leaders don't always recognize when their staff is overworked. So kudos to you for that. But so you feel like we don't have enough entrance into the insurance industry because we're not cool enough?
I'm sorry.
Has anybody met you?
Well, no.
Has anybody
So
met you?
I appreciate that, but the truth is that there are cool people in this industry. I hate to say that the people that get the publicity are the great producers, and they get to do the cool things and go on airplanes and do things. But as far as I know, and I could be wrong, but the classic way that a customer service representative ended up in our office was they were looking for a stable career with that balance, and they kind of fell into the insurance business because that's was the reputation that we had. And you can have that balance because the whole world has shifted,
Yeah.
but those people are no longer quote unquote falling into our laps in the insurance industry. But like, it's we have to get the message out that there's a great industry to work in. It's stable. You can grow. If you work for an
Right.
independent, the bread and butter of our business is we're in your community. We speak your language. Where our house also got hit with a tree. So we can feel those pain points, and you can't do that from afar. So those are the customer
Yeah.
service representatives we got to bring in.
So you're looking for customer service representatives right now.
Yes.
Where are you starting your search? Like, are you looking for somebody that's already got the knowledge and you're willing to mold them, including whatever bad baggage they come with that you've got to try and kick out the door? Or are you trying to do a get your own, grow your own?
So that's something that I've given a lot of thought to, and I work with two baby boomers. I think that's what they're called. So I understand the dynamics, and so I give a lot of disclaimers because I just don't want to I don't really want to offend anyone. But I think that when you look at the generational gap or the generational differences that people have, when you are an employer and you're looking to hire people, you have to make a decision. You have to decide whether you're going to choose a quote unquote younger demographic, and this is not discriminating against anyone else, but the younger demographic that might be more tech savvy, but less insurance savvy because they can't have the experience, and odds are they didn't read up on it and they're not going to do that kind of in-depth training. They're going to learn more on the job via the tech stack.
Right.
Or the other side of that is get that brain trust with the experience from insurance, but know that you're going to have a little bit of a heavier lift on the technology side because that demographic and that generation is a little less tech savvy.
What about the demographic that we have coming in? At the National Alliance, we've got some high school programs that are newer this year, as well as the UACIC, UACRM, which are college programs, as a way, as an effort to try and get a younger generation excited about this industry. And not only that, but college is not for everybody. And so they're able to say, I did this in high school or I did this in college. I've got some foundations for insurance. Are you willing to hire me? And that's what we're hopeful for, is that it's a get your own, grow your own type of situation, because it is so hard to find experienced professionals right now that are either willing to move, especially right now in the remote environment. Some folks are going back into the office and maybe they want to be remote, and that there's some inflexibility starting to happen now that people want, their folks back in the office and the workforce wants to stay remote. Or it might be that, yeah, our industry is aging and we're trying to get newer entrants into it. And they're just not willing to move right now because they're so close to retirement anyways. There's no point in moving. So we're looking at this younger demographic, these high school students that are willing to start with some basics and say, look at me, I've got a high school designation. It doesn't give me a lot, but it does let you know that I am interested in insurance. Can you train me, mold me, grow me in the way I should go?
Right. So great. I think that's a great idea. And I don't mean to knock the program because I think it's a great program and a great idea that you guys are bringing on board. Is that insurance is still a very technical place. And this is the challenge that I have
Mhm.
with VAs. Yes, there are places that specialize in training them about insurance. But number one, it's very technical to begin with. And you got to find people who are willing to actually do the reading and have that next to their bed and learn about the policy language. And I also don't want to lose sight of the fact that there's very often in our agencies a blurred line, and there's been a lot of podcasts about this recently, between what requires a license and what doesn't.
Mhm.
And therefore, if you have a
Yeah, I see a
CSR,
lot of those posts on
right,
social
and the
media.
ideal CSR is actually going to fill both in my mind. They're going to do some tasks
Mhm.
that don't need to be licensed. But if they start cross-selling and they start talking to people, getting in more depth, or developing the relationship with that client and running with it. So if they're not licensed because they're fresh out of high school, or it's going to
It's
take
a
them that
hard
long to
stop,
get their
right?
license, how can I stop a CSR mid conversation when the person asks them a coverage question that takes them to? I don't even know how they would think about that because I wouldn't think about that.
Right. Well, then that's not a problem with our programs, because that's where our programs are centered, is in the technical stuff. Because I mean, carriers do what they do with their language. There's no way that we can teach our programs to match every carrier. Our programs are rooted in the foundation of ISO language and are teaching the high school students to follow the policy, and this is what this comma in this place is going to mean, and this is how, so that's why I was asking. And the whole reason why I brought that up is because the hope for that is to start with someone who is a get your own, grow your own. It's the high school student that comes out and says, college is not for me, and I am super interested in the insurance industry. And they contact Aaron at Gordon Companies and say, I noticed you've been hiring, but is Aaron looking for, and I'm not saying like anything about your hiring practices, is Aaron looking for the get your own, grow your own as a way to get more younger people involved in this industry so that we can bring a younger demographic into the industry and make it cooler, if you will? Or are you looking more for the person with experience? Do our high school students need to come out and find someone who's willing to give them a little bit of experience so that they can apply at Gordon Companies? That's what I'm asking. I'm thinking about my high schoolers that might be listening to this right now and thinking, how do I get to Gordon Companies?
So
How do I get to anywhere?
I think you got to put yourself out there. This is not a challenge because I just don't know enough about the program. But my question for you would be, have you spoken to any of the state licensing boards or whoever that is that they work? And does your program qualify for pre-licensing?
It's a great question. I'm not involved in that level of the program, but you're just assuming that maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Even if it doesn't, getting those foundations and understanding the insurance language, though, puts them a step ahead of somebody that had never touched insurance before and may make it easier for them to get their license.
Right. Well, then
Either
can I
way.
just chime in
So,
on one more thing on that? The challenge there from the employer, and I'm putting my, VP hat on, if you will, now is most insurance agencies run lean. And if you run lean, it's hard to spend money on someone who you really have to educate and who for the first 6 months is not going to do anything but listen and learn, which is great. But that's if I'm hiring someone, that to me seems like a burden. And so right now where I am, where I need to plug them in and get them to play right away, right, and work right away, it's harder for me to think about that because I'm scrambling.
okay.
Maybe I should have thought of this a year ago, right, or 2 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, well, each agency is different, so it's a great conversation to have with you. Either way, each agency is different. Some are going to want to do the get your own, grow your own, and may not be running as lean as maybe the Gordon companies are. So, being in the insurance industry, and I have had the pleasure of bringing in interns and having assistants to my role that helped me as a personal lines department leader. It was always a struggle because we would get somebody that might be interested in some way in the financial world, and they see insurance or they see this job posting, and they came in and they started at the front desk, and we had them on the phones initially, and I was teaching them about personal lines, and they were starting to process my changes, or they would learn about whatever it was, but they lost, like, this isn't interesting to me, it's not cool enough, whatever. So it was hard to get that, like, are you even interested in insurance? Why are you even here? So for somebody in the high school course, it's a couple of semesters long, or even the university courses that we have, they graduate with part of their designation at no cost to the employer that's about to hire them because they've already gotten it. And then they can continue that there's discounts that they can get as students to continue and completely earn their designation, where it's easier for an employer, in my opinion, easier for an employer to look at them and go, oh, you actually stuck with this through high school. That's pretty impressive because high schoolers are kind of fickle and they're going to jump from this to that. And you didn't choose to go to band or you didn't choose to play football. You chose to learn insurance instead. So that shows dedication. And now you're still pursuing this insurance thing. So that still shows that, oh, you do have an interest in insurance. So that's why I was asking about the get your own, grow your own, because for the high school students and the university students that are dedicating their hours to learning that instead of an elective that could be much more fun or cooler, if you will, that shows a little bit of a dedication and maybe worth an investment from an employer's standpoint.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to me on the juniors. Why don't we bring them in as summer interns, at least part-time
Yeah.
afterwards?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
one. And then the second thing would be maybe not everyone in your high school program is not interested in college, right? Maybe they're also just
Right.
interested in insurance. So maybe you bring them in internships while they're in college so that by the time they do come on full time and there's a serious financial lift for the agency,
Yeah.
they've already figured out if they want in.
That would be the hope. I mean, colleges are in charge of their intern programs, but yeah.
But I'm saying, but I think that that's a natural intern program, and I've been looking for interns just because, some of the best agents in America and my friends, they have great summer interns, and what these people do, what these kids, quote unquote, do is they come in and they just turn the agency upside down, and they make you as the principal and as the person who's been doing this forever, they bring a whole new side of energy and creativity
Yeah.
that not that
Yeah,
my agency is
absolutely.
stale, but like I would love that. So anybody who's listening to this, I'm looking for interns also. Great idea on the
Yeah. So
spot.
you've been looking for a while. That's what kind of sparked me is that I saw on social media you've been looking for a couple of months and you seemed a little frustrated because you had interviewed. You have even looked at other avenues to help you get more interviewees, and you're not finding the right person, the right fit. And as one thing I thought was, well, where is Erin looking? Where can we let listeners know that maybe they're not posting in the right areas? Where are you looking for employees? And it's just not just you. I've noticed that this is a thing that is happening here in Arkansas. I know several agencies that are looking for folks, and you can ask. I've asked, like, hey, you looking to move? I've got somebody over here that's really, like, it's a great company, great benefits, and they're like, no, I'm actually really comfortable where I'm at. Okay, that's fine. Do you know anybody? Nope, don't know anybody. It's really hard to find even a get your own, grow your own, somebody that's even interested but doesn't have the experience. It's even harder to find somebody that does have the experience. So where do we need to be looking?
So I looked on social media. I've been posting on every social platform. I posted on, I've spoken to a couple of recruiters who I've worked with in the past, spoken to recruiters who I haven't worked with in the past, who I think could help. I've reached out to the College of Insurance here in New York. Every carrier marketing rep that I work with, I'm like, you deal with a lot of agencies. Anyone who is unhappy, hook me up with them. I'm talking to you, which even though you pronounce insurance, I'm still want to talk to you because that's another one of my campaign slogans because you're from Arkansas and I'm from New York, so obviously my accent is the best. But I'm
Oh my gosh.
sorry,
Okay, then.
but 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 the but the
I'm trying
we're
not
going
to
off right.
interrupt you with laughing.
We're going off track really quickly. But I think that what we need to do a better job of is getting the word out about how awesome this industry is on any side.
Yes.
And I think
Yes.
that one of the things that's really great about this industry, and if you talk to some of the most successful producers, a lot of people start as CSRs, stay as CSRs, love that, and they make a career out of that, and that's a comfortable living and a great living. But a lot of people, you get your feet wet on service, and you're like, hey, you know what? Part of service I love best? The cross-selling. Let me pivot away from this. I have an
So
agency that
fun.
knows that they can trust me. So you can. There's almost no agency in the world that won't split commission with a producer. It's easy
Yeah.
money. So, and you work out the split, but my point is that will let you produce. So then as you're quote unquote CSRing or account managing, you also start to build up that book of sales. And then one day you can just get rid of those mundane tasks that you've realized through the process that you don't like. And you just become an 100% producer and you've grown in this industry. And then you can maybe open your own agency because you know what to do as a CSR and you also know that.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so I tell people all the
I love
time.
watching those evolutions. When I find those folks that do evolve from one position to the next, I love finding those.
So we have at our agency, we fundamentally don't believe in any producer non-competes. So I believe philosophically 2 reasons why we shouldn't have it. Number 1, if that person leaves or when that person leaves, if their insureds are stuck working with you and they actually don't want to work with you and their relationship is where it should be, which is with their producer, then for that year or 2 years, you're going to be miserable servicing them and they're going to be miserable dealing with you. And then the minute that non-compete is over, boom, they're out the
It's
door.
gone. Yeah.
So that's one. But
Yep.
the second thing is the best producer for me, and it's happened to me once before, and once they left and it didn't work out, but is the producer who produces enough business that then they say, I want to go out on my own. And people say, what do you mean? Then that producer is going to be so successful and they're going to leave you and, picking up the scraps. Number 1, if they're that successful, they deserve to have their own agency. And I'm happy that they've come into my industry and made it better.
Good job.
But number 2, do you know how much money I've made along the way where they've built up enough of a book of business?
Yeah. Opportunity cost.
And that's it. And if they decide, and some of them, as they produce, the ones who you think actually are going to want to start their own agency, they say, you know what I've learned producing insurance over the last 5 years? Being Aaron Gordon sticks. You have to deal with all this garbage. You have to deal with the carrier reps and bills and the CSRs and renewals and all that kind of stuff. So you know what? I'm just going to keep rocking it and we're going to be successful together.
Awesome. What I just heard through that whole speech that you just delivered was opportunity costs. Never be afraid of the opportunity costs. And, if somebody is killing it for you and decides to go out on their own, it's an opportunity cost. You were killing it while they were killing it for you. And then you've got a killer person in your network after that. And you've got, the sense of confidence to know that you can produce people like that. So that's amazing.
100%.
So you were an account manager and now you're a vice pres. What was it like being an account manager for you? Did that set a firm foundation for you as far as your service expectations?
Yeah. So for when I worked here in high school, the summers, and then part-time in college, and then my first really 2 or 3 years full-time, maybe even 4, I really didn't do much client-facing stuff. I did service items, so I know how to do every single item in this office. But certainly in those summers, I was only able to use the phone in a reception capacity. I wasn't really talking to anyone. I didn't go to any meetings. I was forced to learn. And it's going to sound, cliche, or you've heard this a million times before, but my parents really, really, really wanted me to start at the bottom. There were times when I felt like I deserved more, and I was obviously wrong about that. There are plenty of people in this industry that think that I'm a huge jerk.
I don't think so.
There are 100% people at carriers that think that I am a stuck-up jerk. And part of it is because I'm so passionate about helping my clients that if there's something even like silly, like an error on a bill, my passion comes through, and I understand that that's something that I've worked on. Like in my office, I can honestly say that when I put my head on the pillow at night, the people who work with me, not for me, say I'm the first one in, I'm the last one out, I'm a hard worker, and I know how to do everything in this office, and I will never ask them to do something that I won't do myself.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what it would be like to see that little kid who came with his twin brother and his older brother and ran around the office and photocopied each other's faces, and their mother yelled at them, to then having to feel like you're working for that kid. So I try to be sensitive to that with my people.
You're an amazing human being, Aaron Gordon. I've met some jerks in my 15 years in the insurance industry, and I can tell jerk from passion. And you've got passion, my dear. You don't have an ounce of jerkiness, in my opinion. And so I'm going to go back to what I said at the very beginning and how much I love watching your videos walking down New York's sidewalks or whatever. You have such an authenticity about you, and to be so young and in the industry, just starting your career, that's so amazing. So I really appreciate you for having this conversation with me today and bringing all the authenticity of yourself. Let me get the words out of my mouth. All the authenticity of yourself to today's podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for doing this. Thank you for having this podcast. Thank you for having this voice. Thank you, obviously, for the competition on the sheriff thing. I was joking when I said that I was upset about it. Obviously, still vote for me. Thank you very much, Aaron Gordon, NY Risk Advisor, New York, New York. Thank you very much. But thank you for having a voice. In all seriousness, really, in all seriousness, my parting words are: everybody. Some of my closest friends in this business say that the problem with the insurance business is that we're pale, stale, male, and it's people like you who. I work for my mother. So she's the boss. She's got the corner office. My father will not be offended for me saying that. And my mother is not male. And she's, as I said, the smartest person I've ever met in this business. So it's people like her.
I want to meet her next. You think she'd do a podcast with us?
So I've been toying with the idea of putting my dad on some of these. My mom is a little bit more self-conscious about that.
Oh.
But I would love to get her on. I think that you should have her on. I think that if you are listening to this podcast and you're female and you want to spend some time talking to my mom, I'll gladly make that happen, because I think that if you ever feel bogged down or negative in this business, we had a client who every single year my mother would make the presentation, and at the end, the client would turn his back on my mother and look at my father and say, David, what do you think we should do?
Oh.
And so she has grown. She's been in this business long enough, and I can't imagine what it was like when she started in this in the early 80s, and yet she's still here. So it's thanks to people like her and people like you for making our industry diverse and for making our industry amazing. And I can't thank you enough for having me on. And I would love to continue the conversation, to get involved in any way I can with helping you with the National Alliance or anything there, and learning more from you there, because it would mean the world to me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being on today. Thanks for listening to today's episode with Aaron Gordon. The biggest nugget of information from this episode is that insurance is hiring, so get out there and take a look. If you are interested in our high school or university programs, check out the program pages at scic.com. Don't forget, we want to hear from you guys. Your feedback helps us tailor this channel to your needs. So drop us a line at podcasts@scic.com. Toodles!